It's been over half a century, but we are finally going back to the moon. The Apollo missions, they were a truly giant leap for all of us. But now it's NASA's Artemis program that's carrying the torch forward. So the big question is, how does this brand new chapter in space exploration really stack up against the legendary one that first took us there? Let's dive in.
So, yeah, why now? Why, after all this time, are we heading back? And maybe more importantly, what's so different about this trip? We're going to unpack everything. The missions, the machines, the crew, and the real reasons we're reaching for the stars all over again.
All right, take a look at this. This is NASA's new ride to the moon, the Space Launch System, or SLS. And get this, it's the only rocket out there that can send the Orion spacecraft, a full crew of astronauts, and all their gear to the moon in one single shot. In fact, it actually packs more liftoff thrust than even the mighty Saturn V from the Apollo days, which officially makes it the most powerful rocket NASA has ever built.
Okay, let's kick things off by comparing the very first crewed lunar flights for each program. The way they approach these initial trips tells you a whole lot about the mindset and the priorities of each era.
Back in 1968, Apollo 8 was one of the gutsiest missions of all time. The space race was on fire, so they just went for it, rocketed to the moon, and pulled off 10 full orbits. Super high risk, but super high reward. Now, Artemis 2 is playing it a bit differently. It's much more calculated. It's a 10-day test flight, really designed to make sure the Orion capsule systems are all good to go. So instead of orbiting, it's going to loop around the moon on something called a free return trajectory.
So what in the world is a free return trajectory? Well, think of it as an elegant cosmic slingshot. The flight path uses the gravity of both the Earth and the Moon to pull the spacecraft along this kind of figure-8 journey. And this creates an incredible safety feature. Once you're on this path, you are basically guaranteed to come home, and you barely have to use any fuel to do it. It's the exact same idea that famously helped bring the Apollo 13 crew safely back to Earth.
So what does this all look like in practice? Well, the Artemis 2 mission is this really carefully planned 10-day journey. After they lift off, the crew hangs out in Earth orbit for about a day, just running checks on all of Orion's systems. Then a massive engine burn shoots them on their way to the moon. The big moment is the lunar flyby on day 6, and after that, it's a 3-day cruise back home for a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean.
Okay, now let's talk about the hardware that's making this all happen. And, even more importantly, the people who are actually strapping in for this incredible ride. This is where you see some of the biggest, most striking differences between then and now.
So if you look at the stats, the old Saturn V was actually the taller rocket, an absolute giant at 363 feet. The SLS is a little shorter, but it's an absolute beast when it comes to power, generating more thrust than any rocket in NASA's history. And what's really crucial here is that it's designed to haul a massive 27 metric ton payload all the way into what's called a translunar injection orbit. That's the path you need to get to the moon. That kind of muscle is absolutely essential if you're planning on building a long-term presence up there. But this evolution, it goes so far beyond just the rockets. The Artemis program really marks a fundamental shift in the whole idea of who an astronaut is and who gets to explore on behalf of all of humanity.
The contrast here could not be more clear. The Apollo astronauts were exclusively white men. The Artemis 2 crew, though, it's a snapshot of the world we live in today. You've got Christina Koch, who will be the very first woman to fly to the moon, Victor Glover, the first person of color on a lunar mission, and Jeremy Hansen from the Canadian Space Agency, making him the first non-American to make the trip.
The world has changed a lot since the 1960s, and so have the reasons for going to the moon. The whole geopolitical landscape is completely different now, and that's sparking a brand new kind of competition.
The Apollo program was almost entirely fueled by the Cold War. It was a head-to-head race with the Soviet Union for bragging rights and technological dominance. Today, things are different. There's a new space race happening with China, which has its own incredibly ambitious plans for the moon. Both countries are actually aiming for the moon's south pole, which is a really strategic area that scientists think holds huge amounts of water ice.
And all of this brings us to the most fundamental difference between these two incredible programs, the ultimate goal. What is the actual long-term vision this time around?
This really gets to the heart of it. Apollo was about getting there, planting a flag, and coming home. They were a series of amazing sprints. Artemis is a marathon. It's all about learning how to live and work in deep space for long periods. The goal isn't just to visit, it's to build a real, sustainable human presence on the moon. It's a critical proving ground for the next giant leap, sending humans to Mars.
And unlike Apollo, which was pretty much an all-American show, Artemis is built from the ground up on global partnerships. This little satellite from South Korea, called the K-RAD Cube, is a perfect example. It's one of a bunch of small satellites from international partners that are basically hitching a ride on Artemis II, each one doing its own science and contributing to this shared goal of exploration.
But you know, with all the new technology, the geopolitics, the science, some things just never change. These words from Commander Reed Wiseman really capture that timeless human feeling of just awe. That incredible experience of seeing our own planet from far away. That's a legacy that connects every single astronaut from Apollo 8 all the way to Artemis II. So in the end, Apollo answered the question of if we could go to the moon. But Artemis is asking something totally new. It's asking how we stay, how we build, and how we can use the moon to go even farther out into the cosmos. It's a whole new beginning, and we're really just getting started.